The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Floating platforms held representatives from dozens of alien species. Each platform glowed with a different color light that matched their home world. The air buzzed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Tae-ho Kim stood on the human platform. His hands were sweaty inside his formal diplomatic gloves. Around him sat the other human delegates, but today all eyes were on him. The weight of his entire species rested on his shoulders. One wrong word could start a war that would burn across the galaxy. Across the chamber, the Drakmari platform glowed deep purple. The dragon-like beings stood tall on their powerful legs. Their scales shifted color with their emotions. Right now, those scales were turning a dangerous shade of red. Elder Hyojin Park stepped forward. She was ancient even by Drakmari standards. Her scales had turned silver with age, but her eyes still burned with the fire of youth. "The humans have stolen our children," Elder Hyojin said. Her voice carried across the chamber without need for amplification. All Drakmari could project their voices like thunder when they chose to. 3 sacred hatchlings were placed under human protection. Now they are gone. A wave of shocked whispers spread through the chamber. Every species knew how important dragon hatchlings were to the Drakmari. They were not just children. They were the future of their entire civilization. Each hatchling carried genetic memories going back thousands of years. Losing even one was a tragedy. Losing 3 was unthinkable. Tae-ho stepped forward. "Elder, Hyojin, please. We understand your pain. But we did not take your hatchlings. We would never harm children of any species." The elder's scales flashed bright orange. That was the Drakmari color for rage. "Then where are they? Your ship took them from our home world. Your ship was supposed to bring them safely to the nursery world. But when your ship arrived, the pods were empty." Captain Boram Lee rose from his seat on the human platform. He was a career military officer who had served on deep space missions for 20 years. His weathered face showed the stress of the past 3 weeks. "Elder, my crew searched every inch of our ship. We ran DNA scans, we checked the air filters. We even tore apart the walls looking for any trace of the hatchlings. They are simply not on our vessel." "Lies," hissed Elder Hyojin. Her tail lashed behind her. The other Drakmari on the platform began to show their agreement. Their scales turned the same angry orange as their elder. "You humans are known for your cunning. You probably sold them to collectors. Dragon scales bring high prices in the black markets." The accusation hit Tae-ho like a physical blow. "Elder, that is a terrible thing to say. Humans have many faults, but we protect children above all else. We would die before harming a child of any species. Would you?" The new voice came from the entrance to the chamber. The doors had opened silently and a group of young Drakmari warriors entered. Their scales were polished to mirror brightness. These were not diplomats. These were soldiers, the leader was a female with scales that shifted between blue and silver. Mireille was Elder Hyojin's daughter and the most famous warrior of her generation. She had personally bonded with one of the missing hatchlings before they were sent away. The pain in her eyes was clear to everyone in the chamber. "Mother, talking is useless," Mireille said as she approached the platform. "The humans took ember, they took spark, they took flicker. My heart-bonded hatchling is gone and these humans speak only lies." She turned to face the human platform directly. "I felt embers, fear through our bond. For 3 days after the transport I could feel terror and confusion. Then nothing. They killed him. They killed all of them." Tae-ho felt his heart sink. The pain in the young warrior's voice was real. She truly believed her bonded hatchling was dead. If a Drakmari warrior believed humans had killed her heart bond, then war was almost certain. "Mireille," he said gently, "I give you my word as a human and as an ambassador. We did not harm your hatchlings. We are still searching for them." "Your word means nothing to me, human," Mireille replied. Her hand moved to the energy weapon at her side. Around the chamber, security systems began to activate. Red warning lights flashed as the Council's peacekeeping forces prepared for violence. Elder Hyojin stepped between her daughter and the humans. Mirai, control yourself. We are in the sacred chamber of peace. There can be no peace while Ember's killers live, Mirai said, but she moved her hand away from her weapon. The chamber fell silent. Every representative knew they were watching history unfold. The Drakmari had never gone to war against humanity before, but they had also never lost royal hatchlings before. Their military was smaller than humanity's, but their technology was older and more advanced. A war between them would drag in every other species in the galaxy. Counselor Wu Jin from the neutral arbiter species floated his platform to the center of the chamber. His people looked like tall, thin birds with silver feathers. They had no stake in conflicts between other species. That made them perfect mediators. The Council recognizes the severity of this situation, Counselor Wu Jin said. The disappearance of Drakmari royal hatchlings is indeed tragic, but accusations without proof serve no one. He turned to address both platforms. The Council grants humanity 72 hours to provide proof of the hatchlings' fate. If proof of their innocence cannot be provided, then the Drakmari claim of theft will be considered valid. 72 hours. Taeho felt his stomach clench. How could they prove they did not have something they had never seen? The hatchlings had vanished from their transport pods like smoke. There were no clues, no evidence, no witnesses. Around the chamber, other species began to whisper among themselves. Some sided with the humans. Others believed the Drakmari claims. Many were already making plans to protect their own worlds when the shooting started. As the session ended and the platforms began to disperse, Taeho caught Mirai's eye. The young warrior stared at him with such hatred that he felt cold. In 72 hours, if they could not find the hatchlings, she would come for revenge. The ambassador looked out the great windows of the council chamber. In the distance, he could see ships from dozens of worlds gathering. Everyone was preparing for war. 3 small dragon children had vanished, and their disappearance might destroy the peace that had taken 100 years to build. Time was running out. Jae-min Song crawled through the narrow maintenance shaft of the starship Aurora's Dawn. His work clothes were covered in grease and dust. Nobody ever noticed maintenance workers like him, while the important people made big decisions up on the bridge. He kept the ship running from the shadows. The ship hummed around him with the sound of 1,000 machines working together. Air recyclers cleaned the atmosphere. Water pumps moved fresh liquid through miles of pipes. Power conduits carried energy to every corner of the massive vessel. Most crew members never thought about these systems, but Jae-min knew every bolt and wire. He had been doing this job for 8 years. Every day he climbed through spaces too small for normal people. He fixed things that broke in places too dangerous for anyone else to reach. The other crew members called him when something went wrong. Then they forgot about him until the next problem. Today was different, though. For 3 weeks, investigators had been crawling all over the ship. Human security officers and Drakmari warriors searched every room. They scanned every storage compartment. They even checked the escape pods. But they never looked in the maintenance areas. Those spaces were too small and too dirty for important people. Jae-min pulled himself through a junction where 6 different tunnels met. This was deep in the ship's belly where the temperature controls mixed hot and cold air. He stopped to check a sensor that had been giving weird readings. The little device was supposed to measure air quality, but lately it showed numbers that made no sense. That was when he heard it. A soft chirping sound came from somewhere ahead in the darkness. Jae-min froze. There should be no living things in the maintenance shafts. The sound came again. It was weak and sad, like a baby bird calling for its mother. He followed the sound through a tunnel so narrow he had to crawl on his belly. His flashlight cut through the darkness ahead. The chirping grew louder. Then his light found them. 3 small creatures huddled together in a warm corner where 2 heating pipes met. They were no bigger than house cats but covered in scales that shifted color in his flashlight beam. One was mostly red with golden edges. Another was blue-green like ocean water. The third was silver with purple highlights. Dragon hatchlings. The missing royal children that everyone was searching for. Jae-min's heart nearly stopped. These were the creatures that might start a galactic war. Everyone thought they were dead or stolen. But here they were, alive and hiding in his ship like scared babies. The hatchlings looked at him with large, intelligent eyes. They were thin and weak. Their scales were dull instead of bright like they should be. The red one tried to stand, but fell over. They were starving. Jamin knew he should call security immediately. These creatures were worth more than his entire ship. Finding them would stop the war everyone feared. But something held him back. The silver hatchling made a small, crying sound. It reminded him of his little sister back home when she had bad dreams. The blue-green one crawled closer to his light, as if seeking warmth. The red one watched him carefully but showed no fear. These were not dangerous monsters. They were just babies who were lost and hungry and afraid. Jamin made a decision that would change everything. Instead of calling for help, he slowly reached out his hand. The red hatchling sniffed his fingers. Then it pressed its small head against his palm like a cat seeking attention. "You are scared," he whispered to them. "Do not worry. I will help you." Over the next hour, Jamin carefully moved the hatchlings to a better hiding place. He found an abandoned storage room deep in the ship's maintenance section. The room had been forgotten during the last refit. Even the computer systems did not know it existed anymore. He made a nest for them using old blankets and heating elements. The room was warm and safe. More importantly, it was completely hidden from the search teams crawling through the ship. The hatchlings seemed to understand that he was trying to help. They followed him around the small room, making soft musical sounds. When he sat down, they climbed onto his lap like friendly cats. Jamin had never seen anything so amazing. The hatchlings' scales changed color based on their moods. When they were content, the scales glowed with warm colors. When they were excited, bright patterns danced across their skin like living art. He needed to get them food. But what did baby dragons eat? The ship's computer would have dietary information, but he could not access it without leaving a trail that investigators might find. Instead, he used his maintenance access to the food synthesizers. He programmed them to create a protein paste, mixed with vitamins. It was the same mixture used to feed injured crew members who could not eat solid food. The hatchlings ate hungrily. The red one finished first and looked at him with grateful eyes. The blue-green one curled up against his leg and began making a purring sound. The silver one played with his shoelaces like a kitten. As the hours passed, Jamin realized something incredible was happening. The hatchlings were not just accepting his help, they were bonding with him. They trusted him completely, even though he was an alien from a different species. He had read about Drakmari bonding in his basic xenobiology classes. Adult dragons chose life partners and formed mental connections with them. But nobody had ever documented hatchlings bonding with humans. Most people thought it was impossible, yet here were 3 royal dragon babies treating him like family. They followed him around their hidden room. They slept piled on top of each other near his feet. When he had to leave to do his regular maintenance work, they waited by the door until he returned. Days passed. The hatchlings grew stronger on their diet of synthesized food. Their scales became brighter and their movements more confident, but they also became more attached to their human caretaker. Jamin started bringing them small toys made from spare ship parts. The red hatchling loved shiny metal pieces. The blue-green one preferred soft materials like rubber gaskets. The silver one enjoyed anything that made interesting sounds. He began to think of them as his children. The red one was bold and curious. He called her Ember in his mind. The blue-green one was gentle and affectionate. She became Spark. The silver one was playful and mischievous. She was Flicker. But while he played with dragon babies in secret, the rest of the ship grew more tense every day. Search teams worked around the clock. Diplomatic messages flew between human and Drakmari fleets. Everyone knew that time was running out. Captain Boram looked older every day. Ambassador Tejo had stopped sleeping entirely. The crew whispered about war preparations and evacuation plans. Jamin knew he was being selfish. He had the power to stop a galactic war just by revealing the hatchlings. But every time he looked at their trusting faces, he could not bring himself to give them up. They had chosen him. 3 royal dragon children had picked a nobody maintenance worker to be their family. For the first time in his life, someone needed him. Someone loved him unconditionally. He told himself he was protecting them. The investigators were rough and loud. The hatchlings were still weak from their ordeal. Surely a few more days would not matter. But deep in his heart, Jamin knew the real reason he kept them hidden. He had fallen in love with 3 alien babies who purred when they saw him coming. Dr. So Young Choi stared at her computer screen with growing confusion. The ship's biological sensors were showing readings that made no sense. Oxygen levels in certain areas were higher than they should be. Heat signatures appeared in sections that should be empty. Most puzzling of all, traces of an unknown pheromone kept appearing in the air recycling system. She had been the Aurora's Dawn's xenobiologist for 5 years. Her job was to monitor the health and safety of all non-human crew members. She also studied any alien life forms they encountered during their missions. But these readings were unlike anything she had seen before. The pheromone traces were especially interesting. The computer could not identify the chemical signature. It was organic and complex, like the scent markers used by intelligent species for communication. But no known species on the ship produced anything like it. Dr. So Young decided to investigate personally. She took her portable scanner and began following the strongest readings through the ship. The trail led her deep into the maintenance sections where few crew members ever went. Meanwhile, Jamin was having the most amazing weeks of his life. The 3 hatchlings had grown stronger and more playful every day. They followed him everywhere, during his off-duty hours. When he worked on ship repairs, they watched from safe distances with curious eyes. Ember, the red hatchling, was the bravest. She loved to explore and would squeeze into tight spaces to see what Jamin was fixing. Sometimes she would chirp to get his attention and point with her tiny claws at loose bolts or worn wires. It was as if she wanted to help with his work. Spark, the blue-green one, was the most affectionate. She would curl up on his lap whenever he sat down. Her purring was so relaxing that Jamin often fell asleep with her warm body pressed against his chest. She seemed to sense his emotions and would nuzzle him gently when he felt stressed. Flicker, the silver hatchling, was pure mischief. She loved to play games and hide in unexpected places. Jamin would spend hours looking for her only to find her hanging upside down from a pipe or buried under a pile of his spare clothes. She had learned to mimic some of his sounds and would chirp back when he called her name. The bond between human and dragons grew stronger every day. Jamin found that he could almost understand what they were trying to tell him. Their chirps and scale color changes became a language he was learning to read. When Ember's scales turned bright orange, she was excited about something. When Spark's scales became deep blue, she was content and sleepy. When Flicker's scales sparkled like stars, she was planning some new game or trick. But the most amazing discovery came when Jamin hurt himself during a repair job. A sharp piece of metal cut his hand and he cried out in pain. All 3 hatchlings immediately rushed to him. Their scales turned the same color of worry, and they made soft, comforting sounds. Then something incredible happened. Ember gently licked his wounded hand. Where her tongue touched the cut, a warm tingling feeling spread through his skin. When she pulled away, the bleeding had stopped and the pain was gone. The cut was completely healed. Jamin stared at his hand in amazement. He had heard stories about dragon healing abilities, but he thought they were myths. Yet here was proof that even baby dragons possessed incredible powers. The hatchlings seemed as surprised as he was. They looked at his healed hand, and then at each other. Ember's scales shifted through several colors rapidly, as if she was trying to understand what had just happened. From that moment on, the bond between them became even deeper. The hatchlings had not just accepted him as their caretaker, they had begun to see him as family in the truest sense. Dr. So Young's investigation was getting closer to the truth. Her scanner readings led her through maintenance corridors she had never seen before. The pheromone trail was getting stronger. Whatever was producing these chemicals was somewhere nearby. She also noticed other strange things. Tool marks on walls where someone had been doing repairs recently. Food synthesizer logs that showed unusual protein requests. Power consumption in areas that should have been empty. Someone was living in the forgotten parts of the ship. Someone who had access to maintenance systems and knew how to hide from the security sensors. The political situation was getting worse every day. News. Reports from the Galactic Council showed both human and Drakmari fleets moving into position for war. Ambassador Tejo sent daily updates that grew more desperate with each message. The Drakmari had given humanity less than 1 week to produce the missing hatchlings. Elder Hyojin was trying to maintain diplomatic protocols, but her daughter, Mi-Ray, was demanding immediate military action. Mi-Ray had convinced herself that her heart-bonded hatchling was dead. Through their mental connection, she had felt 3 days of fear and confusion after the transport. Then the bond had gone silent. In Drakmari culture, this could only mean death. What she did not know was that the bond had not been broken. It had been redirected. Ember was forming a new type of connection with her human caretaker. The hatchling was not dead, but her emotional energy was flowing toward Jaemin instead of her original bonded partner. Captain Boram called daily briefings where he updated the crew on their desperate situation. Search teams continued to tear apart the ship looking for any clue about the missing hatchlings. Scientists analyzed every piece of evidence hoping to find something they had missed. But nobody thought to look in the maintenance areas where a simple repair worker was raising 3 dragon babies like his own children. Jaemin knew he was living on borrowed time. Every day he kept the secret was another day closer to galactic war. He tried several times to work up the courage to reveal the hatchlings, but every time he looked at their trusting faces, he found excuses to wait just 1 more day. He told himself that they were still too weak to handle the stress of investigation. He convinced himself that the rough search teams might accidentally hurt them. Deep down, though, he knew the real reason. For the first time in his lonely life, Jaemin felt truly needed and loved. 3 incredible beings had chosen him over everyone else in the galaxy. They depended on him completely and gave him their total trust in return. The thought of giving them back to the Drakmari filled him with a pain he had never felt before. These were not just alien creatures he was hiding. They were his family now. But as Dr. So Young's investigation closed in and the deadline for war approached, Jaemin realized that his time with the hatchlings was almost over. Soon he would have to choose between his own happiness and the peace of the entire galaxy. The choice was becoming harder every day. Dr. So Young Choi moved carefully through the dark maintenance tunnel. Her scanner beeped softly as it detected stronger traces of the mysterious pheromone. The readings were off the charts now. Whatever was producing these chemicals had to be just ahead. She rounded a corner and saw light coming from under a door that should not exist. According to the ship's blueprints, this section was solid wall. But her eyes did not lie. Someone had created a hidden room in the forgotten spaces of the ship. Dr. So Young pressed her ear to the door and listened. She heard soft voices speaking in gentle tones. One voice was definitely human. The others made musical chirping sounds that seemed almost like responses in a conversation. Her heart began to race. Those chirping sounds matched the audio files she had studied of baby dragon vocalizations, but that was impossible. The hatchlings were missing. Everyone knew they were gone. She activated her portable recording device and slowly opened the door. What she saw inside made her gasp with shock. Jaemin's song sat on the floor of a small room that had been turned into a comfortable living space. 3 small dragon-like creatures were climbing all over him like playful kittens. One sat on his shoulder, another curled in his lap. The third was tugging gently at his sleeve with tiny claws. The maintenance worker looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. He knew he had been caught. "Please do not tell anyone," he whispered. "They are safe here. I am taking good care of them." Dr. So Young stared at the scene in amazement. The missing royal hatchlings were alive and apparently healthy, but more incredible than that was their behavior. She had studied dragon social patterns for years. Adult dragons were territorial and aggressive toward other species, yet these babies were treating a human like family. "How long have they been here?" she asked softly. 3 weeks, Jaemin admitted. "I found them scared and hungry in the air shafts. They were lost and weak. I could not leave them to die." Dr. So Young activated her scanner and pointed it at The hatchlings. The readings confirmed what her eyes were seeing. These were definitely the missing royal children. Their genetic markers matched the official records perfectly. But there was something else in the scanner data that made no sense. The hatchlings were showing brain activity patterns she had never seen before. Their neural networks were active, in ways that did not match any documented dragon behavior. "Have they been acting strangely?" she asked. Jae-min looked confused. "They seem normal to me. They play and eat and sleep. They follow me around and like to be petted." "Dragons do not like to be petted," Dr. So-young said slowly. "Adult dragons barely tolerate physical contact even with their own species. And hatchlings are supposed to be aggressive toward anything that is not dragon." She watched as Ember climbed onto Jaemin's head and began grooming his hair with her tongue. Spark rubbed against his arm like a cat seeking attention. Flicker played with his shoelaces while making happy chirping sounds. "They have bonded with you," Dr. So-young whispered in amazement. "This should be impossible. No human has ever formed an emotional bond with Dragon Young." She activated her recording equipment and began documenting everything. This was the discovery of a lifetime. The first recorded case of interspecies bonding between humans and Drakmari. It could change everything scientists thought they knew about consciousness and emotion. But even as her scientific mind raced with excitement, Dr. So-young realized the terrible timing of this discovery. Outside this little room, two galactic civilizations were preparing for war. Long-range sensors showed both fleets moving closer to the battle zone. Ambassador Tai Ho had sent his final report to Earth. The Drakmari deadline was less than 48 hours away. If the hatchlings were not produced soon, Mireille would convince her people that humans had committed murder. War would be inevitable. "We have to tell them," Dr. So-young said. "The hatchlings must be returned to their people." Jaemin's face went pale. "But they are happy here. Look at them. They trust me. I am their family now." "I know this is hard," Dr. So-young said gently. "But millions of people will die if this war starts. We cannot let that happen." She knelt down beside him and looked at the hatchlings more closely. They were indeed thriving under his care. Their scales were bright and healthy, their eyes were clear and alert. Most remarkably, they showed no signs of the stress or fear that captive dragons usually displayed. Ember looked up at Dr. So-young with curious eyes. The little dragon chirped a greeting and then climbed down to sniff her scanner. When the device beeped, Ember jumped back in surprise and then chirped what sounded like laughter. "She is not afraid of me," Dr. So-young observed. "Normal dragon hatchlings would attack a stranger who entered their territory." "They know you are my friend," Jae-min said. "They can sense emotions somehow. When I am calm, they are calm. When I am happy, they play more. When I was worried about getting caught, they stayed close to comfort me." Dr. So-young's scanner confirmed his words. The hatchling's brain activity was synchronized with Jae-min's emotional state. Their neural patterns shifted to match his moods. It was as if they had formed a mental connection with their human caretaker. This was beyond simple bonding. This was something entirely new. The hatchlings had developed the ability to read human emotions and respond to them. They were learning to think like humans while remaining dragons. "This could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness," Dr. So-young said. "You have created something that should not exist, a bridge between two completely different types of minds." But her excitement was tempered by the reality of their situation. Time was running out for the entire galaxy. Every minute they delayed increased the chance of war. She activated her communication device to call Captain Boram. Then she stopped. Once she made that call, everything would change. The hatchlings would be taken away. Jae-min would lose the family he had found, and the incredible bond they had formed might be broken forever. What if separating them causes trauma? She asked herself out loud. What if breaking this bond hurts them psychologically? Jae-min looked at her with desperate hope. "You see why I could not give them up. They need me, and I need them." Dr. So-young watched as Spark curled up against Jae-min's chest and began purring. The sound was so peaceful and content that it made her smile despite their dire situation. But then her scanner detected something that chilled her blood. Multiple ships were approaching the Aurora's dawn at high speed. The Drakmari war fleet had arrived early. Elder Hyo Jin had lost patience with human delays. Mireille had convinced her mother that immediate action was necessary. They were coming to search the ship themselves. If they found nothing, they would consider it proof of human guilt. "We are out of time," Dr. So Young said. "The Drakmari fleet is here. We have to decide right now what to do." Jamin looked down at the three small creatures who had become his world. They sensed his distress and moved closer to him. Their scales shifted to worried colors as they tried to comfort their human family member. In a few hours, Drakmari warriors would board the ship. They would search every corner until they found the truth. The secret could not be kept any longer. But would revealing the hatchlings save the peace or destroy it? And what would happen to the incredible bond that had formed between one lonely human and three alien children who had chosen to love him? The future of the galaxy might depend on how they handled the next few hours. Red alert sirens screamed through every corridor of the Aurora's dawn. Captain Boram's voice echoed from the ship's speakers announcing that Drakmari vessels had arrived and were requesting permission to board. The tone in his voice made it clear that this was not really a request. Dr. So Young grabbed Jamin by the shoulder. "We have to go to the bridge right now. There is no more time to wait." Jamin looked down at the three hatchlings who were pressed against his legs in fear. The loud sirens had scared them. Their scales had turned dark colors that meant confusion and worry. "I cannot leave them," he said. "They are afraid." "Then bring them with you," Dr. So Young replied. "It is time for the truth to come out." Jamin knelt down and gently picked up Ember and Spark. Flicker climbed onto his shoulder by herself. The hatchlings seemed to understand that something important was happening. They stayed close to him as he stood up. The walk to the bridge felt like the longest journey of Jamin's life. Crew members they passed in the hallways stared in shock at the small dragons riding on their maintenance worker. Some pulled out communication devices to report what they were seeing. Others just stood with their mouths open in amazement. By the time they reached the bridge, word had already spread throughout the ship. Captain Boram was arguing with someone on the main screen when his communications officer whispered in his ear. The captain turned around and saw Jamin standing in the doorway with three very much alive dragon hatchlings. "By all the stars in space," Captain Boram whispered. "They are real." The main screen showed Elder Hyo Jin aboard her own ship. The old dragon's scales shifted through several colors rapidly as her translator tried to process what she was seeing through the video link. "The sacred children," she said in a voice full of wonder. "They live." But before anyone could celebrate, Mireille appeared on the screen behind her mother. The young warrior's scales were flashing bright red with rage. "Lies and tricks," Mireille hissed. "They kept our children prisoner for weeks. This is proof of their guilt." Ambassador Taeho stepped forward carefully. "Elder Hyo Jin, we can explain everything. The hatchlings were never prisoners. They were lost, and this human found them." "Lost?" Elder Hyo Jin's voice rose with disbelief. "How can royal children become lost on a human ship?" Dr. So Young activated her portable scanner and connected it to the ship's main computer. The readings show they have been hiding in the maintenance system since the transport began. They escaped from their pods during a system malfunction. The bridge's main screen filled with data from her investigation. Biological readings, pheromone, traces, and timeline analysis all supported her explanation. The hatchlings had been living free inside the ship's infrastructure. But Mireille was not convinced. Why did this human not report finding them immediately? Why hide them for weeks while we prepared for war? All eyes turned to Jamin. The quiet maintenance worker had never spoken to so many important people at once. His hands shook as he held Ember and Spark. Flicker nuzzled his neck for comfort. "I was afraid," he admitted quietly. "They were so small and scared when I found them. I thought the searchers might hurt them by accident. So I decided to take care of them until they were stronger." "You decided?" Mirai's voice was deadly cold. You decided to steal royal children and keep them as pets? They are not pets, Jamin said with more strength in his voice. They are my family. The word sent a shock through both ships. Even Elder Hyojin's scales shifted to surprised yellow. The concept of a human claiming dragon children as family was beyond anything in their experience. Impossible, Mirai said. Dragons do not bond with inferior species. That was when something remarkable happened. Ember lifted her small head and looked directly at the screen showing Mirai. The little dragon's scales flashed bright orange and she made a loud chirping sound that the translation computers rendered as one word. No. The simple denial from a dragon hatchling silenced the entire bridge. Everyone knew that dragon children could not speak in adult language until they were much older, yet Ember had somehow learned to use the translation system. Dr. So-Young checked her scanner readings with growing excitement. The hatchling's neural activity is unlike anything in Yobenumbai, our databases. They have developed new brain patterns from exposure to human thought processes. She turned to address Elder Hyojin directly. Your children have not just survived. They have evolved. They are becoming something new. Commander Do-hyun Kang appeared on the screen beside Mirai. The older warrior had been studying the data, feeds from the human ship. His expression was thoughtful rather than angry. Mother Elder, he said to Hyojin, I have been analyzing the biological readings. These hatchlings show signs of voluntary bonding behavior. Meaning what exactly? Elder Hyojin asked. Meaning they chose this human as their family according to their own free will. In our oldest tradition, such choosing cannot be denied or reversed. Mirai's scales flashed even brighter red. But Ember was bonded to me before the transport. I felt our connection. I felt her fear and then her death. You felt her fear, Dr. So-Young agreed, but not her death. You felt the moment when her emotional energy shifted from you to her new chosen family. On the screen, Mirai's expression changed from anger to something like pain. She chose him over me. Spark, who had been quiet in Jamin's arms, suddenly lifted her head and looked at the screen. The blue-green hatchling made soft chirping sounds that the translator converted to words. Miss you. Love you. But love him more now. The simple honesty of the statement hit Mirai like a physical blow. Her scales shifted from red to deep blue, the Drakmari color of grief. Elder Hyojin studied the scene carefully. Her ancient eyes moved from the hatchlings to Jamin and back again. She could see how the small dragons stayed close to their human caretaker. She noticed how their scales reflected his emotional state. Show me their health readings, she commanded. Dr. So-Young transmitted detailed biological scans to the Drakmari ship. The data showed hatchlings that were not just healthy but thriving. Their growth rates were normal. Their brain development was actually accelerated compared to typical dragon children. They are well cared for, Elder Hyojin admitted. Better than many royal children in our own nurseries. Commander Do-hyun consulted a datapad filled with ancient Drakmari legal codes. Mother Elder, our laws are clear about bond choosing. Once a dragon freely selects their family, that choice must be honored. But he is not Drakmari, Mirai protested. The laws do not specify species, Do-hyun replied. They speak only of choice and bond strength. Elder Hyojin closed her eyes and seemed to make a difficult decision. When she opened them again, her scales had shifted to the silver color of deep thought. Human called Jamin Song, she said formally. Do you accept the responsibilities that come with Dragon Bond partnership? Will you care for these children until they reach adulthood? Will you help them learn their heritage while respecting their new nature? Jamin looked down at the three small faces watching him with complete trust. Ember chirped encouragement. Spark purred softly. Flicker touched his cheek with a tiny claw. Yes, he said without hesitation. I will love them and protect them for as long as they want me to. The bridge fell silent as everyone realized they were witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history. A human was being accepted as family by royal dragon children with the blessing of the Drakmari Elder Council, but Mirai was not finished. And what of me? She asked quietly. What of the bond Ember and I shared? Ember looked at the screen and chirped sadly. Then she made sounds that the translator struggled to render properly. Still love Mireille. Want to see again. But Jae-min is father now. The word father sent another shock through both ships. The hatchlings had not just bonded with a human, they had adopted him as their parent. Elder Hyojin's scales shifted to warm gold, the color of acceptance and peace. Then, let there be no war between our peoples. Let this day mark the beginning of a new understanding between dragons and humans. Captain Bo-Ram activated his ship-wide communication system. All human vessels stand down from combat readiness. Peace has been achieved. But as the immediate crisis ended, everyone realized that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The galaxy had just witnessed the first interspecies family bond in recorded history. Nothing would ever be the same. 6 months later, Jae-min Song stood in his new quarters aboard the research station Unity. The room was 3 times larger than his old maintenance worker cabin, but the size was not for his comfort. It was designed to accommodate 3 rapidly growing dragon children who needed space to stretch their wings. Ember had grown to the size of a large dog. Her red scales now shimmered with gold patterns that appeared when she was happy. She loved to help Jae-min with his work, using her sharp eyes to spot problems he might miss. Her favorite game was organizing his tools by size and color. Spark was nearly as big as Ember but more graceful in her movements. Her blue-green scales had developed silver highlights that danced like moonlight on water. She was the gentle one who sensed when Jae-min was tired or stressed. She would curl up beside him and purr until he felt better. Flicker had become the most playful of the 3. Her silver scales now carried rainbow highlights that shifted through every color imaginable. She loved to explore the research station and had made friends with crew members from dozens of different species. Everyone knew her cheerful chirping sounds echoing through the corridors. The Unity Station had been built specifically to study the bond between humans and dragons. Scientists from across the galaxy came to observe the first interspecies family. Dr. So-Young Choi had become the station's lead researcher. Her published papers on dragon-human bonding were already changing how people thought about consciousness and emotion. The hatchlings are not becoming human, she explained to a group of visiting researchers. They are becoming something entirely new. They retain their dragon nature while developing human emotional patterns. It is like watching evolution happen in real time. Jae-min had also changed over the past months. He was no longer just a maintenance worker. The Galactic Council had given him the official title of First Human Dragon Guardian. He studied dragon, history and culture while teaching the hatchlings about human customs and values. But the most important change was in his confidence. Taking care of 3 alien children had taught him that he was capable of much more than he had ever imagined. The shy, overlooked worker had become a respected figure in interspecies relations. Mireille visited the station every few weeks. At first, her meetings with Ember had been awkward and painful. The young warrior struggled to accept that her former bond partner had chosen a new family. But gradually, she had found a new role as an honored aunt figure. I was selfish, she admitted to Jae-min during one visit. I thought bonding meant ownership. But watching Ember with you taught me that love means wanting what is best for someone, even if it hurts. She had become Jae-min's teacher in Drakmari traditions. Under her guidance, he learned the ancient songs the dragon children needed to hear. He practiced the ritual movements that were part of dragon culture. Most importantly, he learned how to help his children understand their heritage while embracing their new hybrid identity. Elder Hyojin had become an unexpected ally. The old dragon visited regularly to check on the hatchlings' progress. She was amazed by how quickly they were developing under human care. They are learning things that take normal dragon children years to master, she told the research team. Their minds are more flexible because they are exposed to different ways of thinking. The success of Jae-min's family had opened doors throughout the galaxy. Other species began to wonder if similar bonds might be possible with their own young. Several experimental programs were started with volunteers from different worlds. Captain Bo-Ram had been promoted to admiral and put in charge of the new Interspecies Family Protection Service. His job was to ensure that any future cross-species adoptions were handled properly and safely. What Jaemin did by accident, we now need to do by design, he explained to his staff. But we must never forget that love cannot be forced. True, bonds happen only when both sides choose freely. Ambassador Tejo had returned to Earth as a hero. The peaceful resolution of the dragon crisis had made him famous throughout human space. But he always credited Jaemin with the real victory. I am good at talking, he said in interviews, but Jaemin is good at loving. In the end, love accomplished what diplomacy could not. The research station had become more than a place of study. It had become a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. Species that had never cooperated before were now working together on joint projects. The success of one human maintenance worker and 3 dragon babies had shown everyone that differences could be bridges instead of walls. Dr. So-Young often watched Jaemin and his children during their daily routines. She saw how Ember would bring him tools without being asked. She observed how Spark would comfort him when he was worried about their future. She smiled when Flicker would play pranks. That made him laugh despite his responsibilities. They are not just family, she wrote in her research notes. They are becoming a new form of consciousness. Human logic combined with dragon intuition. Individual thinking balanced with pack loyalty. They are showing us what the future might look like. The evening routine in their quarters had become Jaemin's favorite time of day. After dinner, the 4 of them would gather on the large sleeping platform that served as both bed and nest. The dragons would curl up around their human father while he read to them from both human stories and dragon legends. Tonight, as he finished, a tale about brave explorers discovering new worlds, Ember lifted her head and looked at him with bright, intelligent eyes. Father, she said in perfectly clear human speech, are we the first? The first what, little one? Jaemin asked. The first family like us. Dragon children with a human father. Jaemin thought carefully before answering. The hatchlings were old enough now to understand complex ideas. They knew they were different from other dragon children. They also knew they were being studied by scientists from across the galaxy. Yes, he said honestly, you are the first. But you will not be the last. Spark raised her head from his chest. Will other children like us be happy? I hope so, Jaemin replied. But happiness is not guaranteed just because 2 species can bond. Happiness comes from love and care and understanding. It comes from family members who support each other no matter what. Flicker made a contented purring sound. We are happy, she stated simply. We have the best father in the galaxy. The words filled Jaemin's heart with warmth. A year ago, he had been nobody special. Just a lonely worker fixing pipes and replacing air filters while more important people made decisions about the fate of worlds. Now he was raising 3 incredible children who might represent the future of interspecies relations. Scientists studied them. Diplomats consulted with them. Leaders from dozens of worlds wanted to learn from their example. But at the end of each day, when the scientists went home and the diplomats finished their meetings, Jaemin was still just a father, tucking his children into bed. That was the role that mattered most to him. I love you all, he whispered as the dragons settled down for sleep. Love you too, Father, they chorused back in perfect harmony. Outside their quarters, stars filled the viewports with brilliant light. Each point of light represented a world where different species lived and worked and dreamed. Some of those worlds had children who might one day find families across the barriers of biology and culture. The galaxy had become a smaller, warmer place because one human had chosen kindness over protocol. Because 3 dragon babies had chosen love over tradition. Because sometimes the most important changes start with the smallest acts of compassion. In the darkness of their quarters, 4 hearts beat in peaceful rhythm. A human father and his 3 dragon daughters sleeping soundly while the universe grew a little more connected around them. The future was full of possibilities they had only begun to imagine.